bonjour. I get to use my French, which I've not really used since college, and it wasn't great even then. Thank you so much for having me. This is my first trip to Canada, and if you're going to Canada, I mean, go to the most beautiful place in Canada. Couldn't love it more, though I kind of feel like we don't know where we are. We've got dark lighting, the curtains are drawn, but trust me, after the session, you're gonna go outside and enjoy the gorgeous scenery and beautiful environment. So, Facebook, that's where I am now. That's my little daughter, who I miss very much, but I'll be seeing her soon. And that's me as a child in the other picture. And I start with that because I think it's important just to set the stage that not only have I worked in digital entertainment for a long, long time, but I'm also a huge, huge fan. I'm like notoriously what's called a pop culture vulture and consume so much television, people are amazed that I'm even able to like still do my job. And wish I could be watching Orange is the New Black like, as soon as possible. So, background about me and the digital space, I launched an entertainment news website in 1995 when no one knew what it was. My dad was terrified, like post-college, that I wasn't going to be able to get a job because what is a website? But I started something called Girls on Film with my friends from college because we love movies so much and just wanted to talk about movies, talk with each other, share our thoughts and ideas, and the internet gave us a chance to do that in 1995. And we had no idea, by the way, that we'd started a business, and it got a little bit messy at points. But it was very, very early days, and we just had a lot of fun connecting. You'll see that green piece is a joint movie review that I did with my colleague at the time, and this was social media circa the early 90s. Here's what I think, here's what you think, let's put it out there, and by the way, let's post our email addresses on a website, and people just started emailing us to complain, including a kid who emailed us from his dad's email address, complaining about something we said about Nicolas Cage, and ultimately the federal authorities had to get involved, and then the dad had quite a talk with his son who was using his AOL email address. But those were very, very early days, and you'll see that when I talked about TV back then, I had to record shows on a VHS tape if I wanted to see them and I wasn't at home. And I think about how spoiled I am and we all are now. Kevin Beggs was saying this. Everything's on demand. There's so much amazing storytelling out there. But back in the day, I had to pick one show, record it on my VCR if I wasn't at home, and that was the way it was. Then I went to Lifetime Television, so I have a strong passion for the cable industry. And Keisha, I don't know if she's here, but one of my former colleagues from Lifetime now works at Lionsgate. And we started doing these chats, which were about whatever the ladies were most interested in, no surprise, sex chats, with our sexpert that we facilitated by sitting in a room. People were emailing questions, we were posting them. It was so incredibly low tech, but even then we knew that people really wanted to talk and connect about the stuff they loved the most. And at Lifetime at the time, that also was, of course, the Golden Girls and the fantastic late B. Arthur. So that was what we did. Then I moved on to Yahoo, where my job was to figure out what entertainment news meant for a big internet company like that. We did a ton of research and found that what people really wanted was to connect with the celebrities and their issues in ways that related to them. So you'll see this is a onesie, and I put that there because when we did our research, Brangelina, it's Brad and Angelina, for those who don't know, had just had their first child, and they were on the cover of People magazine with the baby, and the hottest topic in our focus groups was around, where did the onesie come from? Can I get it? Is it expensive? And by the way, it ended up that it was like a very low budge. Everyone could order it, and it sold out and was a whole thing. But what it said to us is that people want to find a way to connect, and what they want, and at the time this didn't completely exist, is to share their piece of this story with the world. And to me, that's just the thing that's most important, whether it's, hey, that's a really cute hairstyle, how do I get it? This happens to be a mugshot, but I'll have you know that it was one of the most popular questions around this time was, how do I get that really, really cute look, even though that wasn't Nicole Richie's best day? So, we're always thinking about how we connect pop culture, entertainment, and that passion with the content and story that we love and with each other. So my question to you guys, as someone who's been doing this 20 years, is everything we think about content, storytelling, entertainment, and how digital plays in these spaces maybe just a little bit wrong? So let's start with this idea. Digital media. So I was in the digital media group at a cable network, and I just put out there to you guys, do we still need to have a digital media group? seems a little bit antiquated. Like, shouldn't that just be a part of everything that we're doing? So this is a cave drawing. It's story. It's a way that people are sharing way back in the day. And oh, this looks a little bit like aliens to me. So maybe people were even sharing these, outer space crazy stories way back in the day, still sharing these stories today. Not the most legit, but just think about how people gather around great story, whether we're sharing them through low-tech methods or new technology, music. We're always having new ways, and Kevin Beggs alluded to this, that things will continue to change in terms of how we share story and material, from laser discs, which I don't know if anyone here remembers a laser disc, but I do. Huge, right? Seems so old school, and even now CDs and DVDs seem very dated. I mean, we have a pile of those that people were sharing even back, when I was at Seacrest, that now people are using as coasters, so, or decoration. But you ask yourself, like, what does all this technology mean for how we share and connect? Whether it's something that's isolating, my brother and I each putting our Walkmans on in the back of the car so that my mom didn't have to listen to us fight, to something that's more connecting, and then you end up with this, oh my gosh, where to begin? Where should my head be around all of this stuff? And it gets a little much. So we think, do we silo this stuff? We're going to talk with Mike Farah from Funny or Die, and he's someone who works on web series, TV shows, movies. It's all great stuff. The thing it has in common is that it's all really, really funny. Does it need to be siloed, or is it just great story that we should think about supporting in all of the same ways, just different sizes? So again, you heard Kevin talk a little bit about this, and it's very true. Like, we're for sure in the golden age of story and TV. I mean, you'll see this, which is a picture of my TiVo recording 4 shows at once. I highly recommend the TiVo Romeo, and I'm not on their payroll. There's so much good stuff. On that night, I had Game of Thrones, I had a reality competition show, an award show, a comedy, Penny Dreadful, which is a new show, and by the way, I'm still trying to get through this list because I do have a day job and a child to tend to. But the point is, we're each our own head of scheduling now, and for those who are at networks, the head of scheduling is someone who can make or break a show. When I was at Lifetime, we just hoped to get time with Tim Brooks, who at the time was the head of scheduling and is an iconic thinker about TV. And now you have me in my sweats programming my own schedule, my own network. It's pretty amazing. And so whether you're disappointed and you want to talk about that, you have all these venues. You can write fan fiction, you can post in social media, and it's either overwhelming or a really, really great opportunity. And a really good example of a brand that I think has done evolution really well is National Geographic. So this is 1939. This is today. And you see National Geographic has 5 million followers, which is really sizable. Why do they have that? Because they've stayed totally true to their mission, which is beautiful, beautiful photos, great story about the natural world. They've just adapted to the forms while staying true to what they're all about. So next question is, do we need to stop using the term social media? Isn't it all social? If it's great, it is. So, this is a thing that I thought was sort of funny, but YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, those are just ways of saying, talking, sharing, gossiping, gathering around the stuff you love the most. So, call it what you will, but it's really just sharing, and we're inspired to share always around great story, whether it's around the campfire, around the TV, old school when there were no distractions, or today, where you've got all these different screens in one room, some kids playing a game, someone's watching television, another one's on their phone, probably texting, but we're still connecting and sharing, and this I love because it reminds me of the way I was before we had all these tools. So American Idol season 1, I was still living in New York, and I would get on the phone with my best friend, and we watched the show and talked about it on the phone while watching the show, which now seems like so old school because who talks on the phone anymore? It's crazy. We can't even get phones, by the way, in our office. Like if you want a phone, it's complicated to commission a landline. But like this is social. This is sharing. When it's great, you feel like doing that. And this is Star Wars, the original. There was no high technology to talk about this film. It's just amazing. So that you're saying to someone, have you seen this movie? It's so great. So, it really just goes to show you that, if it's good, and if you've got people, which everyone does, you're sharing and connecting, and it's more than just social media, it's just how we connect. So Mad Men is a favorite, not just because Lionsgate happens to be here. I'm very traumatized that we have to wait until next year for the rest of the episodes. But they've created a lot of material around great characters that we connect with. And whether it's these amazing figurines or my personal favorite, Betty Draper, who Lionsgate posted this. It's so great, right? So they posted this on Mother's Day. And I would ask you guys, is that marketing? Is that story? Is that content? Is it promotion? I took that and posted it in my own Facebook page. So theoretically, I was promoting Mad Men, and guess what? Sunday's a day that show is on. So I'm driving tune-in on their behalf. But I posted it because it's hilarious, and they get their characters, and they get how someone like me would connect to that. So, I just call that good stuff, and we'll post it endlessly. And to that end, this is me on Facebook, huge HGTV watcher, Property Brothers, everything, love it. And so this was me posting about, anyone who watches House Hunters knows that there's sort of certain tropes that are always in every episode, and then everyone else I know glomming on. So we were creating our own material around a show and around a network that we love. And the only thing HGTV needed to do in order for us to do this is program great stuff that I love and my friends and colleagues love. And again, is that social media or is that just connecting? And I think people really do connect when the content is meaningful to them. So, then we have to ask ourselves, should we think about media the way fans do, which is just stuff that I love, like what's in my TiVo? Do we want to get bogged down in what's what? And Mike and I will talk about that too. Is it web? Is it TV? A great example of that is Netflix. I don't know, when did the first original series launch on Netflix? Anyone? It's been in the last 2 years, right? So, they're now Emmy winning with original series that appear, along this spectrum, but are not made for a traditional TV network. So, what do you call that? I just call it like shows I'm obsessed with. And I think we'll continue to see more of that. So you think about this ecosystem, there are two ways to think about surfacing great story and material to fans. There's the way it is in the real world where people are just drawn to what they're drawn to, and you want to make sure they know that's happening. So I love home decor shows. I know I go to HGTV. I watch that stuff there. I know that I love great drama. Netflix is starting to be known for that. You get to that point where you're probably going to watch anything that they put on. I know I love funny things. I go to Funny or Die for that. So you can have this, which is natural and is kind of working, or you can have this, which is like a real house, by the way, with plastic swans and fake flowers and a very siloed way of thinking about story and fans. And that gets us to this word content. And I would suggest that we just need to think of story as the thing that connects people and that will always get people to share with each other. And that's really where we want to be. And whether it's watching something on your phone or your laptop or your big, huge TV, if it's great content, then you connect with it. And you call it storytelling. So that's something that I think is like an exercise that we need to think about and see if we can get there, but I think we can. So to that end, like this really made me laugh, but like 500 words on this new content. What does that mean? Is it befuddling? Is it something you write on a typewriter, on a laptop? And how do you think about just beautiful story that's truly, compelling? And Kevin Begg said this, and I really thought it was true, that they program in part based on people getting up on the table and jumping up and down like Genji Kohan for weeds. Like that was a passion project. And then of course they're working with her on Orange is the New Black. But you want stuff that's going to make people jump up and down and go crazy. And then it is story. And then people like me are posting and sharing about it on all these platforms and marketing and promoting on your behalf, just like I did for Mad Men with Betty Draper. Because the story connected to me. And that gets us to this idea of sharing, and again, to thinking about marketing and promoting differently. And it is me, us, and you you probably know which of your friends or colleagues loves the shows that you do. In fact, a guy on my team spoiled an episode of Game of Thrones on like the first day. I just started Facebook. It was the first day he was working for me. He was so excited we were going to do something with HBO, and he just got ahead of himself and said, and this is going to happen in this episode. And I mean, it was epic. Like, I could not believe it. We both had to hang up and recover. And now we're great. But it just, he didn't know in the us factor that we're both huge Game of Thrones fans. And now he does, and we talk about it all the time. But it is how we connect. It is through this great story and our passions for it. And so, one idea, and it's starting to happen, is for people to bring the great ideas to us and develop them. And Veronica Mars is a really iconic example of that, where I was a huge fan of that show on TV. I contributed to the Kickstarter campaign, very exciting, to be able to help bring something back that I loved. And the next thing you know, it's a movie. It's now going to be a comic book series, and they're doing a web series. So, that's great story, championed by the fans, people connecting around it, and a model that we never could have imagined happening years ago for great IP to come back. And another thing that I've just float out to the room is, if there's story that we love, it may have a very long life, much longer than we ever would have imagined. I mean, we could all think back to those great shows like Friday Night Lights, which I loved as a movie, I loved it as a series. If someone said in some way, shape, or form that was going to come back, I would be like beside myself. And there are these opportunities for IP to come back to us. So thinking about how you nurture it in kind of the off cycles, and those could be quite long. I mean, Veronica was off the air for years. It's really interesting and just not something that existed before. So it gets us to the, there's so much opportunity, like where do we turn? And to that end, where do we even turn for talent these days? So, bloggers are becoming TV hosts, are hosting their own things strictly online. We just did something with the Fashion Council where an Instagrammer was awarded alongside traditional fashion designers. He may be the next Tim Gunn, hard to say. Or he might host something that's not on TV, and that might be just as impactful. But the talent is coming from all fronts. This is a blog that has tons of followership of ladies, and maybe there's a women's show that's on Lifetime or maybe no, maybe it's just online, and that's enough. And I don't know, is Ezra here, Cooperstein? I can't see. He's here somewhere, I think. Anyway, oh, hi, Ezra. So Ezra's from Fullscreen, which handles YouTube talent. So if you've never seen any of these people before, I suggest you go check them out. O2L is a boy group. They're kind of like the monkeys of YouTube. They don't have any discernible talent. And I say that from a place of love. I've worked with one of them directly on something, and he was amazing. They're adorable. They make a lot of programming. They post every day. They really understand their audience, and they engage with their fans like crazy. So there was just a huge event in New York on Saturday called DigiFest that had 10,000 attendees. And if people are wondering, like, our young female audience that used to watch MTV or the CW, like, what are they doing? They're watching all of these guys. They paid, they came, 10,000 of them, for a whole day of music and like these guys jumping around and balancing cotton balls on their head. And they cried and got autographs just the way you would for more traditional talent. And so I think thinking about where we look going forward for talent and even just changing our perspective on what a star is. I had a conversation with someone from the more traditional side of TV who said no YouTube star has broken out yet in the traditional model, to host like a major television show. And I said that I'm not sure that's what they want, that success looks very different to them. They're running their own show. They're producing it themselves. They don't have a lot of other people in the mix. They don't take a lot of feedback. They don't need to. And they may be making their whole show in their sweatsuit, like in their house. So it's a deeply different model and different time. And I think it's very exciting. And Connor, who I mentioned, when I started following him on YouTube in the fall, had, I think, 100,000 followers. And he's now at 2.5 million in well less than a year. So these are people to watch and to think about and just to try and change our perspective a little bit. So it's interesting. And it can either be kind of scary, like this kid is going to make the decisions on who the next stars are. And by the way, on an iPad, which every kid that age can completely use and buy an app and do things that you don't want them to do. My daughter certainly can. And what TV is going to continue to change. And either that's me, stressed out, overwhelmed, like what does it mean for us going forward? Or you could just see these changes as a huge opportunity, and that's why when Kevin said this, I was so happy, as we have great story and fans connect with it, and we use platforms like Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and Instagram to share and connect, I think we're going to be in a really, really good place. If we fear sort of where this new talent is coming from and try and contain it, and maybe stick with some of the old ways, like siloing our digital people in our companies, I think it's going to be a lot harder to evolve. So I'm excited as things continue to change, and even though it makes me feel old to watch these like young guys posting videos every day and not doing anything and becoming huge stars, but I get it, and I'm excited. So with that, I wanted to bring Mike up, and Mike notoriously produces many amazing shows for broadcast, as well as Between Two Ferns for Funny or Die, the head of production there. And what I love about Funny or Die, we work with them very closely at Facebook, is that they started as a digital company, but they make traditional television, they make movies, they make branded content, and they're functioning in a way that I think is really instructive for the rest of us without some of those silos existing. So I'm going to haul Mike up here, ask him some questions, and see what he has to say for himself. And we'll leave Obama talking to Zach Galifianakis up there because it was such a delightful moment. For those who didn't see it, you should check it out. All right, I'm grabbing my questions. This is Mike. I don't need this.
They didn't need to watch that video because they have great health care up here.
That's true. That's so true.
We're still learning.
That's true. So let's start, just because we have it up there, with Between Two Ferns and booking Obama for what is, even though I don't want to call it a web series, it's a web series. How did that come to pass?
We had been working with the White House for about a year, and the healthcare system in America is obviously so broken and still needs a lot of work. And we do so much topical content at Funny or Die that we just kind of wanted to get involved and see if we could kind of make an impact, because it is relevant content to our audience. Our audience is young, and obviously the White House needed young people to sign up, and so we started pitching ideas, just like we kind of treated the White House as the celebrity. Mm-hmm. We treated the Affordable Care Act as a celebrity, and what type of ideas and what kind of cool people could we get involved to try and get the message out. And we were lucky because we kind of built a foundation of pieces that the president had noticed that kind of made selling the firm's dream that much easier. And
so is it fair to say that President Obama is a fan of Between Two Ferns? Have you seen it before?
It was interesting because I told Zach and Scott Aukerman, Zach Galifianakis and Scott Aukerman, I was like, oh yeah, he loves ferns, he's excited to go, and like we're going to do this. And then I think he was on a radio interview with Ryan Seacrest after it came out, and that's when I found out he had no idea what it was until Valerie Jarrett told him. I was just like, oh, well. Well, you know what? His daughters knew what it was.
See, the daughters are so important,
yes,
right?
Yes, anytime we're trying to get old people to do something on Funny or Die, we usually go through their kids or grandkids, and the president was no different.
I love that.
That's true, yeah.
So for you guys at Funny or Die, how are you structured, like department-wise? Because one of the things that I think is such a huge opportunity is to start not having like a digital person set off to the side, or digital team, but rather having digital baked in, whether it's into marketing or casting or development. Has that happened for you guys because you were digital first?
Yeah, it's really in our DNA. I mean, your presentation was great. I was trying to think of something to disagree with you about so that we could seem really controversial. But all of that made a lot of sense. Yeah, it's so baked into what we do. Even when we had that South by Southwest partnership with you guys, we had a house down there that Facebook was a part of. And all the different groups, whether it's brand entertainment, social media. Don't yell at me for using that word.
I won't.
I don't know what Hollywood would do without buzzwords that confuse people.
That's true.
Because you use words to try and confuse people so then you can exploit them. And if we don't have those words, there's nothing left to exploit.
True.
So I'm a little bit at a loss. But yeah, no, we think about all these things together. And we were actually just in a meeting last week kind of going over our TV projects, because TV has been good to us recently. And we reiterated to the team working on that we don't have a TV department. We really have a content department, another bad word. But that's how we kind of think through things. How can social media be a part of it? How can the writers and the creative process, how can branded, how can a commercial come out of it? How can pictures and words posts come out of it? Because that's how you have to think about these things for them to have any chance, because there is so much clutter out there. Like, you highlighted things that are good and successful.
True.
That's like 0.001% of everything. And we're part of the problem, because we have to create content. The internet never sleeps. It's like this beast that always has to be
But then
fed.
how do you tackle, and I think this is an issue for whether it's web original content or shows. I mean, there's so many shows, there's so many channels at this point. How do you guys tend to the issue of discoverability so that people know that this great thing is out there? And that's true for, you have a show coming on Discovery soon.
Yeah.
How do you push on the marketing and promotion of this great stuff so that people can find it, or the right people can find it?
It's a good question. I mean, you can have all the followers in the world, and we're up to about 20 million across all the different channels. But unless you have stuff that people want to share, there's no real point to all of that traffic or those followers. So we always try and look at things. How can something be, accessible but still unexpected? How, like, I thought you might have a quote up there of like Zach Galifianakis asking the president what it's like to be the last black president.
Right.
Gets people like, I can't believe that happened.
Right.
Like when Will Ferrell did The Landlord 7 years ago, no one had seen a movie star on the internet. And that's a really good video. So when you see a movie star in a grainy home video and it's funny, you're just like, oh, I can't believe this happened. There still has to be that kind of like, what the fuck kind of mentality to the content, or you're not going to have a chance with it. So we do try and think those things through. And now at this point, we've probably made 1,000 celebrity videos. I've been a part of 1,000 celebrity videos. So you always want to think through what makes sense for that person and that idea so that it can kind of break through the clutter. But, that doesn't mean they're all successful.
And with your TV programming, you guys bring to the table a lot of expertise in marketing and promoting content outside of TV, so digital first stuff. Are you able to work with, whether it's Comedy Central or Discovery, and try and bring some of that expertise to the table? Or, are they pretty focused on their approaches for marketing when it comes to traditional TV?
Yeah, it's been good. We try and do as much as we can on our own to kind of set a high bar, because we don't have many TV shows. We're not a network who has 20, 30, 40. Who even knows how many projects that they have to care about? So what we try and do is present a really comprehensive and well thought out plan to show what we're going to do to leverage all of our followers and our platforms, and then try and have them step up and match that. And usually they're always really excited. Well, one, because we don't charge them for this. So I think one day that would be a nice thing, to one day get to a point where we actually get paid to promote our own shows, and it helps them. It's helping them sell their product. So in best case scenario, it becomes a very complementary process, and that's what we're doing with our Discovery show, American Muscle. That's coming out in July. That's what we do with At Midnight on Comedy Central. With Billy on the Street for Fuse, they didn't have a huge presence, so we kind of controlled that whole thing. But we don't take an adversarial approach to this stuff at all. There's no ego involved. Everyone says in those meetings the right things, and that they want, the show. Like, everyone wants what's best for the show, and yeah, that's true. But people get busy, so we really want what's best for the show, and we're really invested. So we try and do everything we can to make it stand out.
And who owns the presence of a show that you guys produce across the social and digital platforms?
Well, across ours, we would. We would never have someone else write our social copy. And I think, but by the same token, we don't take on the approach of like, oh, Discovery, you don't know what you're doing. Actually, Discovery has like 20 million fans on Facebook.
They're huge.
Yeah, so they know what they're doing for their audience, and we know what we're doing with our audience. So we talk through everything. We have tons of calls about it to see, okay, what are you guys doing? What are we doing? How is it going to be similar? How is it going to be different? So it has to be really integrated. So we are definitely in the driver's seat for everything that we do, but we respect other people's processes, and if they're doing their jobs well, that's great. If they're not, then it's sometimes become, asks, for forgiveness instead of permission.
Yeah, I think there's a really interesting thing going on around who develops that home for programming on the digital platforms, because there can be that Veronica Mars style transition, or when a show goes off the air, or if a show has an international footprint, so it may not be on in one market but it is in another. There are some interesting complexities that are going to happen going forward around that IP, because if you've built up a strong presence across Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and all those places, you will have a strong desire to retain that, I think, as the production company. So I just throw that out there as something to think about, that I think in the future is going to become a hotter topic. And then I wanted to ask you around sourcing talent, whether it's in front of the camera, writing talent. We recently were meeting with a team called Hello Giggles, and they have had a bunch of their female writers get cast on or staffed for sitcoms. So people are sourcing from lots of interesting places now for talent on all fronts. How do you guys deal with the fact that there's so much emerging talent on these new platforms? Like, are you looking? Do you have people who are tending to new comedians? Like, how do you handle it? Because it's a lot.
It is a lot. Everyone who works at Funny or Die, kind of myself included, got their jobs just by the work they were already doing outside of Funny or Die, because it's so easy. I mean, it's not easy to make great stuff or stuff that may be a sensibility fit for us, but it's easier now than ever to go out and actually create create stuff that people hopefully
Shows
like
of all
and
sizes.
share. Yeah, and so yeah, we do look at those things, and it's, the web has come a long way, but just like how you said with your example, people still want to go to TV.
Yeah.
It's not, and I've actually gotten into disagreements with the writers at Funny or Die and some of their reps, because I really feel that a place like Funny or Die teaches you how to be a creator. It teaches you how to be a showrunner. But we're not at the point where we can pay what a staff writer on a network show pays. And so we're still in this weird adolescence phase. But that's why I love all these YouTube kids who are just going out and doing it. And you're right, some people don't want that success, but other people do. And that's the thing. There's no stock and trade answer for what's going on here. Every artist kind of has to decide what makes sense for them. And at Funny or Die, I think we have had people go to Conan's show and SNL and everything else. But I think, the savvier people might just stay and build out this whole portfolio, because instead of hoping to get that staff writing job on a show you don't even like, then you're in a position to go with Funny or Die and pitch that show and create it. And that seems like you'd be skipping a lot of steps.
Yeah, it is interesting. I saw some of the YouTubers were up for hosting a game show, and ultimately the network that was doing this game show went with more established talent from their network, in part because the YouTubers were so used to doing their own thing that they couldn't really get their heads around being part of a traditional show process, that they weren't in charge of every aspect, and also that they were going to need to be there at a certain time. They started having conversations around, this is the call time, this is where you need to be, and things went totally sideways. And it'll just be interesting to see how that evolves. And then there are folks like, I don't know if you guys saw that picture of Tyler Oakley, who has kind of light purple hair. He has started crossing over and doing some red carpet hosting, and I think he's one to watch to see how he makes that transition. He's very much his own thing, but has the chops to do some of that more formal and structured work, and we'll see what happens with these folks. It's all gonna kind of merge in the middle somewhere, I think. What do you consume, content, story, show-wise, yourself when you have time? What does your TiVo look like?
Worst.
I showed mine.
Oh man, this wasn't in the questions that you sent me. How dare you stump me? What do I watch? I watch True Detective. I don't watch a ton of stuff. For me, because I'm working all day to create things, I don't go home and just oh man, I just need more storytelling in my life. I go home and read books. But True Detective was badass, obviously. And Down Abbey I watched Down Abbey
Nice,
with my
classy.
mom.
That's like the yin and
Oh, yeah,
yang
that
of
was
shout
great.
outs, right? Downton Abbey and True
And
Detective.
I should watch all, I talk about Netflix like I watch their shows, but I don't.
Interesting.
Like, oh yeah,
Cover your
Netflix is
ears,
doing
like Netflix
amazing things
people.
out there, but I've never seen a second of it. But that's something I will do.
At some
Yeah.
point.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, you can watch it on the plane. It's like available to
I
you
won't
on
do
your
that.
machine. Oh, you're
No,
not going to do
no.
that. No. And
There's too much content. It's so funny because like it's great having all these buyers, but I really wonder how all these cable channels are going to exist. And like it's so funny because there's an inverse relationship for how many channels are created versus how many people actually watch.
right. Well, did you hear? You know, Kevin was saying this morning, and I thought it was so interesting. You know, he was saying that there's, you know, the potential that we're just going to go almost completely a la carte, and that people will end up paying more because they'll pay, you know, $6 for this and $6. You know, I mean, I could imagine, you know, the things I would pick and choose and pay for in an a la carte world, and it does start to add up. You know, it gets you to that $100 cable bill pretty quickly.
Oh yeah.
You know, so it's interesting to think about that, and even just where you watch the stuff. I mean, I assume do you watch on a television, or what's your, you know?
Yeah, TV. Yeah. I've watched some Funny or Die videos online. I watch stuff on not online, on my phone. I'm not a content watcher expert.
No?
No.
You're a content maker expert.
I actually really, that's what I care about. Like, I care about the things that I have to get done and Funny or Die has to get done to kind of build out the business. I'm not concerned with what other companies are doing. And that's not to sound arrogant. It's just like I'm not thinking about what another platform is doing because I just want our stuff to be as good as possible.
But so along those lines, when you think about, you know, where Funny or Die is and where you want it to be, do you, you know, when you think about the competition, you know, Kevin was talking about, you know, the different platforms going forward, and, you know, I'm really interested in the different devices. You know, are people going to watch things on, you know, like Google Glass, or watching a show like right up here, like I'm talking to you and watching a show at the same time. You know, what do you think about
Do
it?
you feel like Google Glass is just going to be this generation's Segway?
It could be. It could.
Like, remember when Segways were like, oh yeah, Segways are going to
Gonna be a
change
thing,
the
right.
world. Like, who wants to walk around? Like, no. Like, actually, when I went to the White House Correspondents' Dinner, I was with some talent, and like all these legitimate publications were just like, oh yeah, can you get this famous person to wear a Google Glass on the red carpet? I was just like, what? Like, it's amazing that someone would even ask people to do that. I mean, maybe someone would, but it just seems so embarrassing.
I'm quite sure that I would have seasickness or like fall immediately on my face if I'm like watching something in here. And for
Yeah.
me, it's for sure no, for now. But maybe in the future, yes. Who knows? You know what? I will say this: if I had glasses that were telling me like everyone's names, like at an event, like I looked over and it was like, that's Mike, like right in my ear, that would be totally amazing.
That would be
so
helpful. Yeah.
sign me up for that.
Yeah.
Technology. But what, like platform-wise or other content creators, like are there things you're looking at that you kind of go, ooh, I mean, I know you guys work with Hulu, you work with all of the current players, but do you, like, are you looking, not at Google Glass, but it's something that you think is like the next either platform you need to be programming for, or even audience?
I think for Funny or Die, if things go well, you know, we'll keep the website is really the engine that drives everything. So that is by far the most important thing, and that's when you're talking. We don't silo anything, but that's really, you know, what got us to this point. So you don't want to forget that. But when it comes to TV, you know, I would love to be able to get to a point, and I love working with Comedy Central. I love working with all these different networks. I'd love to be able to get to a point where we had the thing where Funny or Die could act as, you know, the production company, the studio, and the network all at once. And what's that piece of content that is good enough that people don't mind spending $1, just $1 to watch 10 episodes of this well-produced, cool thing with cool people. And so I don't think we're there yet, but it's something that we definitely think about because, you know, because when you do things in the traditional world, you give up a lot of those all rights, essentially.
Yeah.
And the only way to break those things down is to have a piece of content that is special enough that you can take people from there and move them over here. And so far, we've been able to do that with short-form content, but it's all free. And
Right.
so for us, we would really have to make something great that feels like, okay, this is the thing that we feel will work enough of it where people be like, oh yeah, that's a good value exchange.
That makes sense. And then in closing, just because to me this is so interesting, and that's why I showed the YouTubers, you guys reach a really desirable audience, a young male audience who loves comedy that can be fairly hard to reach through traditional television. And you saw, the YouTubers who I think reach that young female audience who can also be hard to reach through television. What's your thinking around how you continue to tap into these audiences that are falling away from more traditional broadcasts? Like, how do you stay in touch with those guys?
Yeah, I think it's kind of two-pronged. One, you can be strategic and work with Facebooks and work with platforms and cultivate that voice on all the social media platforms. And that's a real thing that you should be doing. But also it just comes down to making stuff that will make our writers laugh. And what's funny in the room that will then translate over. And I think that people do respond to those singular voices and something that feels authentic and something that feels that's connecting with them, all the stuff that you talked about in your presentation. And there's obviously no scientific approach to that. So what's nice about Funny or Die, for all these different groups to work together well, it's all those things are integrated very early on instead of just stacking on top of things. And then that's how the voice can somehow get diluted to some degree. So early on is how you have to approach it, and that's kind of baked into what we do. And hopefully we'll be able to continue to do that as we grow.
Nice. I agreed. I'm a fan. Love the funny.
Thank you.
I wanted to say thank you to everyone, and to also say that I really champion the idea of finding your digital people wherever they might be tucked away at your companies, and like hauling them out of that little silo, and getting them at the table around conversations of marketing and promo, around casting. They're good people, and I am one of them. And I think it'd really start to change how we do things. So I welcome that, and we're here to help, certainly, those of us who come from the digital side. So thank you for being so welcoming to us.